Hello, in this video I'm going to be going over how you configure an Oracle client resource in Networker using the NMDA Wizard method. So I'll be covering the wizard to create an Oracle client resource, and I'll also be going over some of the common RMAN options in the wizard as we go through our configuration. So here I have my Networker backup server, and the way you create the client through is by right-clicking on the clients. Here I'm up top here in configuration tab. Right-click on clients and select new client wizard. First thing you do is specify the host name of the Oracle server. Next, and now if I had NMDA successfully installed correctly on that machine, I will see all my different application types that I can choose that NMDA supports. I'll select Oracle. Here I can specify a particular media pool that I want to send my Oracle backups to. I've created already a media pool in Networker Backup Server called Oracle. So I can keep my Oracle backups separate with other types of backups that I'm doing like file system or SAP. Here you can specify the deduplication type if you have that available in your data zone. So if I had a data domain box, I can specify that I want to do a data domain backup, a deduplication backup. I can also specify an Avamar dedupe backup. So I would specify here from the drop-down menu my Avamar, my dedupe storage node, the Avamar grade here. In this case, I'll just select none because I have neither set up in this machine. Next, I'm going to leave this schedule backup for Oracle Disk Backups for a separate video and be focusing on customize scheduled backup. So the difference between typical and schedule is this one will assume a bunch of defaults, like you want to do a full backup of the entire database, and but by selecting custom, I can show you more of the options that you have available to tune. Select next. Here, if I had an existing RMAN script that I wanted to use for my backups, I could try to use it here. But I'm going to select next so I can let the wizard create the RMAN script for us. So in this slide you can see that the Oracle home variable has been picked up from that Oracle server, and this is my Oracle home. The TNS admin and NLS lang variables, I can specify them here if they're not default. For example, if the TNS names.array file was not in the default location, I can specify the path to it here. And starting with NMDA 1.6, I can now specify Oracle OS authentication or the traditional Oracle database authentication. So this was always the default in previous versions to 1.6, but now with 1.6 and forward, I can also do an Oracle OS authentication through the wizard. So here, if I wanted to do that, I would specify the Unix hostname of the Oracle owner, and then I would specify the instance that I want to back up. But I'm not going to use this method. I'm going to use the database authentication method. And I specify my Oracle database user and password and the instance name. And now if I was using a recovery catalog, an RMAN recovery catalog, I could also specify the credentials for that so that when the backup is performed, it also registers those backup pieces to the RMAN recovery catalog in addition to the control file of the target database. So I'll go next here because I don't have an RMAN catalog. Here I can specify whether I want to back up the database and other objects or just archive log files only. I'll select the default because I want to back up the database, and through that I'll be able to back up the archive log files as well. You can see here that I was able to successfully log in with the previous username and password handles that I provided, and I've connected them to my database called ORCL. These are all the table spaces and data files underneath it. I can choose to back up the entire database or a subset thereof. I'll let the whole backup run and click next. Now, this is an area where we can specify various RMAN options. For example, how many number of channels do we wish to allocate for the backup? So it's like a degree of, for example, the number of channels is a degree of parallelism that we want our RMAN to run in. So I want to have four streams coming out of RMAN for the backup. I can also specify the backup level if I wanted. So by default it's full, but if I wanted to, I can specify an incremental level 0 and then other incremental levels like level 1 afterwards that would be based off the level 0. And they can be both either differential or cumulative. If I had some data files that were offline or inaccessible, I can choose to skip them through the methods here. The backup name format is basically the format clause in the RMAN script. So I can modify that here if I wish, but I have to guarantee uniqueness to the backup pieces that are generated, and %U does that. But I can come here and say something like this to customize my backup format name. I can also give the backup a particular tag so I can find it more easily in the list backup commands that I can do later on with the RMAN metadata. Backup the control file and archive log files are by default enabled. Uh, I can choose to skip backing them up, but I'll just leave them set. Some additional options here, for example, files per set, which is a degree of multiplexing that I can do in Oracle. So by default, it's going to do files per set equal 1, which means it's going to grab one Oracle object, send it to a backup piece, and send it to the backup server. But if I have files per set equal to, let's say, 5, it will grab 5 Oracle objects, multiplex them together, and send them over in that RMAN channel that we've allocated up top over to the backup server. So this is kind of like your RMAN multiplexing. I'll leave it at 2. It's totally customizable how you wish to configure it. And select next. And we have some additional network or data options here. If I want to make the backup encrypted or compressed, I can choose so here. There's some advanced backup options for the NMDA portion, which is they're all explained in the NMDA Administrator's Guide. For example, specifying a particular interface for the backup server, or if I want to use the Oracle backup copies feature, that's why I use these variables here. One that I recommend that you use is the NSR RMAN arguments to specify a message log to keep the RMAN output. So I can have a running copy of the full RMAN output from my backups. The way I do that is I select NSR RMAN arguments and specify a message log and then a file name and select append at the end. So this way, every backup that is done with RMAN, it's gonna keep that output of RMAN in this file, so I have a historical copy for my reference. Next, I can choose to delete the archive log files that I finished successfully backing up. So after they're backed up from they're backed up using NMDA, I may not want to keep those log files on the file system because they could eventually end up causing it to fill up. Or I could come up with a compromise where I'll keep the last 7 days worth of or X whatever number of days I want of archive log files on local disk and then delete the older ones. That way I have the most recent ones in on the disk. Next, you can see that it just gives me a recap of what my options in the wizard that I selected, the RMAN script that it generated based on those options. I can choose to come here and edit this if I wanted to, or just leave it as such. And next. If I wish to execute any pre and post command processing for my NMDA Oracle backup, I can do so here. If I wanted to dump out the RMAN script that the wizard has created into a file from a reference, so I can have a copy of that, and also the schedule backup configuration file that the wizard created on my behalf. I can have a copy of that from my records by specifying the full path and file name. Here I can specify the browse and retention policy for my backup and specify any uh, comments or remote access field. This is a common slide to even non-NMDA backups. So I'll just put NMDA as backup. Here, if I wanted to specify, if I want to create a new group for this client or use an existing one and send my client into that group, I have already a group created called Oracle that I'll put this client in. And which backup storage node do I want to use? Here in this example, my backup server is called MacWin1, and that's the only storage node available. I'll send it there. And now it will give me a recap, a couple of recaps of what it's doing. So it's recapping all the options that I've selected, and I'll click create. And it's adding all this information into the network or server lockbox, and it successfully created my Oracle client resource. The format that you see here in the SafeSet field is basically we precede the word RMAN, and then in this example, we have the instance name underscore. It gives you the level of the backup, which is we selected full. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful, and stay tuned for more videos to come.